Hi, welcome to the Signature Leadership Podcast, where we watch world-class leaders uncover their authentic selves. Welcome, Dorie Clark.
Hey, Jamie. Really good to be here with you. Thanks.
My pleasure, and thank you for being here. I was inspired after reading your book, which I have right here on my Kindle, The Long Game. And one particular thing that I loved about this book was a point you made about don't ask for a year, because it's the quickest way to potentially blow relationships, especially new ones. And when I was creating this podcast, and I've never said this with other guests because there wasn't that relevance, I wanted to create something where within a short amount of time, I was giving high quality leaders like you, whether or not we knew each other previously, something that was beneficial, that we could do something together, that was fun, that was a bit of a gift. So I want to thank you for inspiring me in that way through your book, The Long Game.
That's so fantastic. Thank you. I love that.
Perfect. So we're going to jump right in, and I'm going to ask you right now, Dorie, what is a leadership challenge or possibility? It could be in your professional life, it could be in your personal life, that you're dealing with right now.
All right. Well, I'm going to give you one hot off the presses, Jamie. I would appreciate your help with it because it is something that I think about a lot. So in December of 2021, I bought a place in Miami, and I had been living in New York up to that time. And so I moved to Miami. I still have my place in New York where I'm staying, I go part-time, but I'm a Florida resident. I'm spending most of my time, the vast majority, in Miami. So all that's pretty good. I had a good rhythm with things. Okay, I'll spend a little time in New York. I have theatrical interests. One of the sidelines that I have been developing, which you probably read about in The Long Game, is developing a sideline for musical theater. So it's nice to have a place that's up there so I can go and connect with people around that. New wrinkle though, new development. I have a new serious girlfriend who, as it turns out, lives in Boston. And so I feel like torn in a lot of different directions because I do now have a lot of business travel. So I'm trying to figure out, eventually we want to live together. And so I have to think about how I would allocate my time. I feel like I just moved to Florida, so I kind of had this vision in my head that I would be here for a number of years. Also, I have an 85-year-old mother who is very healthy now, which is wonderful, but she may not be forever. She really freaking loves Miami. And so I know she would like to spend time here, but only if I'm here. So I have a lot of kind of conflicting priorities, and I'm not really sure how to think about it or how to begin to think about it. So I'd appreciate your help.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing your vulnerability. I think it's relatable. Well, let me ask you a quick question. If we were back together 1 year from now and celebrating your life, in this case, and how it's evolved and grown beyond what you could have ever imagined in this relationship in terms of where you live, what are all the things we're celebrating?
That's a good question. I mean, I do want to be able to spend more time with my girlfriend. She has been, we've really made an effort. Like, we've both been traveling a lot. But it's onerous, to have to hop on a plane every other thing. So it would be nice if we had a more consistent schedule of when we're actually living together. She's an academic, so she does have some flexibility, at least at certain times of year, to be down with me in Florida. And she seems willing to do that. But, there's lots of chunks where she's needed on campus in Boston. And I think hopefully something we're celebrating, God willing, is that, my mom is still very healthy and independent and doesn't need to be looked after. Although I do, I like to see her a lot, but hopefully she has the flexibility to, and the health to be able to stay okay. And then the third thing is my goal that I set for myself in 2016 is that I wanted at the time to learn to write musicals and to get a show on Broadway in 2026. We just had a staged reading of my show in New York, a few weeks ago as of the time of this recording. And we are marching on, and our goal in the near term, which seems possibly attainable, is to have a off-Broadway show sometime in the next year and a half or 2 years. And so that's hopefully also something that is factoring in terms of successes.
Okay, perfect. So, what I'm hearing is you have this, big goal that you have with creating this musical, continuing to develop that. You have your mom over here who you have obviously a close relationship, and you want to make sure that she feels taken care of and continuing that relationship. And you have this new exciting relationship in Boston, which is beside New York. Boston and New York are relatively close, correct?
I mean, they're about four. It's like about a 3.5-ish
Yeah.
train ride. So
Okay.
it's totally doable, but it's not like a quick commute.
Okay, perfect. So this is a great context. We're gonna jump in now. We're gonna look at your handwriting, which you sent me earlier and you have in front of you. And I wanna see if we can look at a few things that might be, in some ways, influencing that decision, whatever that might be, and even some blind spots or issues that you might wanna look at, whether or not we solve it in these next few minutes. And so I'm going to pull it up here. And so as you're watching this, if you're listening to it, I'm pulling up Dorie's handwriting. And if you're seeing it, it's actually blocking my face for a moment. But I'm going to refer to a few things, and I'm going to ask you how it sits with you. And please feel free, Dorie, to interrupt as we're going. So what I'm seeing here is you have no problem or challenge setting these long-term goals, which I would expect from one of the world's leading strategists. And you see that in the top line. Nelson Mandela had this trait as well, and that is the visionary T-bar. The T-bar, if you look in your writing, Dorie, on the top, it's a high, strong T. It almost looks like a cross, and it doesn't dissipate. It's very strong and clear and confident across. And that is combined with the first letter of your first name is large and strong. It's about 2.5 times the size of the letters that follow it. Oprah Winfrey, for example, has this trait. You walk with confidence, you command respect in social situations, and you're the type of people that people want to follow, who is a leader with just enough confidence that balances with the rest of your writing is I would say a healthy sense of confidence, not overconfidence. There's a humility there. Now, when it comes to those long-term goals, I think you have it figured out. But what you're saying now does align with a little bit of what I'm seeing in the eye dots. The eye dots throughout look almost like sharp points. If you look objectively, they look almost like you just scratch them, almost like you're in a rush. You just splatter them on. Throughout, this is the consistency in both samples. So what that could show us is that in the short term, the decision that you have to make around these areas is actually causing you mentioned in our pre-chat, a little bit of stress, a little bit of irritability. It's not necessarily a negative thing, because irritability could mean that when there's a smoke alarm and you're trying to figure out potential dangers, you're trying to weigh the different options, you're trying to make the best decision you can in the moment. And so the first thing I would ask you is, how is that irritability that is handwriting is what's beneath the surface, it's underneath, it's not always what we're conscious of. How are you hearing that in terms of that irritability, that smoke alarm, trying to struggle to make that right decision? And I'll tell you what's interesting, in the word silly in the first line, it's connected to the why. It's in the same word. Now that could be a coincidence, but that why shows the desire for change and variety in life when it comes to travel. And that big loop in the why. So you have desire for change and variety, but yet that I dot is very sharp and annoyed almost by the different decisions that you have to make at that time. How are you hearing that?
Yeah, I think that's interesting, Jamie. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I am somebody who I think in general likes to embrace new things. But, an interesting part of the context, I guess, for this is it never occurred to me to leave New York before the pandemic. And then the pandemic happened. And, unlike a lot of people, I didn't leave at the beginning of the pandemic. I was like, no, I'm going to stay. I'm going to stick this out. And then I just spent 2 years living there and watching like all my other friends leave and then be like, oh, this sucks. This is terrible. And so it made, so I was definitely annoyed by all of this, by like, New York sort of de-New Yorkifying itself, where everything was closed. You couldn't do anything. You couldn't go anywhere. Yeah. And then there was no one to do it with because so many of my friends had left. And so that was the moment that sort of opened me up, where I'm like, you know what? If I'm going to have to rebuild so much, I might as well rebuild somewhere else. So let's try something different. So I think that I sort of had settled in my mind of like, yeah, well, I'm gonna just make a long-term go of the Florida thing, and I am enjoying it. I like it, but now it's like a new wrinkle. Like, oh God, do I need to like move to Massachusetts after a year and a half? So I'm open to it, but it feels a little discomforting because it was not what I was intending.
Yeah, it's like you're juggling. Well, you've said it, but that I dot also, it's hard to believe that one trait could potentially mean these different things. But with consistency, I've seen the pattern. It's also a form of almost like a runner at the start of a race and like really wants to take off. And in the short term, it's really figuring out, okay, how fast do I start? Do I pace myself, or do I just shoot forward and then deal with, whatever happens around me? And what I would ask you moving forward is, so we can turn this conversation into something implementable by the end of the few minutes we have left, is, it sounds obvious, but can you clarify, even though you just did, more succinctly, what do you want? What do you want right now with this situation?
Yeah, that's a very good question to ask always. Good coaching question, Jamie. What I want, I guess, I recognize that the variable about my mom and her health is not something that I have insight into. It's, whatever's going to happen is going to happen, right? So I would like clarity about that, but that is not to be had in the universe. So I just kind of have to take that as it comes, I guess. So I think that what I would like is to find a way that I can, let's see, I'm coming to this. I think what I would like is to find a way so that I can maximize the amount of time that I spend with my girlfriend and have it feel good and not like I am sort of giving up prematurely on a thing that I was intending to do.
Okay. These are a few qualities on that note. These are a few qualities that are showing up in the writing, and I wonder if these can help make the decision. And again, I'm just, the stroke is a stroke where it is on the page. This is not even coaching, but if we focus on your mom for a moment, the I loop in the first I, that shows that is a subconscious connection to your mother figure, right? Like, so it's there, yet with you, because we're all paradoxical in different ways, you have made decisions in your life. You might have made decisions throughout your life more independently and autonomously in terms of charting your own path. And you see that because the capital I on it looks like a Roman numeral 1 with a shelf at the top and a shelf at the bottom. And so even though there's a connection to your mom in terms of on a subconscious level, she's had a significant influence on your life, you still make decisions autonomously. And you've actually, throughout your life, if you look at the Clark, it looks like the K has a loop in it like this, and there's a sharp edge on the top. That tends to be, and this is all due respect, I've seen this with some of the leading entrepreneurs in the world. For example, Steve Jobs had this trait. It's the go to heck K. That is defiance against authority, and you also combine that with a small d with a tiny loop throughout, which is on the second line on friend, people eater friend. You do that throughout, yes. That combination of the go to heck K and that small loop is you're an independent thinker. You do not just follow the status quo, and that's helped you make decisions throughout your life. So I would ask you, and that's what do you want? That is the simplest coaching question. But in this case, I'm going to say respectfully, and not selfishly, not what your mom wants in this case, not what your girlfriend wants. I think what you want and trusting your own instincts based on what you've done in the past to get to where you are can be helpful. There's one more point I want to make on that. How are you hearing this?
Yeah, good. I'm loving it. I'm loving it, Jamie. Keep it going,
Okay.
man.
Okay. Now, there's a lot of spaces between your letters. Now, consistent spaces. So, again, paradoxically, you actually love people. You're empathetic. There's a warmthness. There's an emotional intelligence. Not just because I've met you. It's in the writing. Consistent stroke. Right strokes across. That's high EQ, a consistent mood in how you approach people, especially professionally. Even it dips really. It really dips to the right at times, which is that theatrical part of you. But yet, you need your alone time. You need space. You do not function well. I think this is where some of that slight irritation or stress happens when you feel like in a relationship. It could be a professional relationship, but this is personal. When you feel like you feel a bit claustrophobic. You feel like you're someone is something's moving too fast, not in a relationship, but in terms of your space. You need your space. You're comfortable being alone as well. Even though you are a people person, there's that balance. You can be with people, you can be without people. So I wonder in your relationship, have you discussed this, and this may be none of my business professionally, have you discussed this with your girlfriend about the possibility, the different possibilities that may exist, living together, living in cities 3.5 hours apart, so that in some ways you can have your cake and eat it too?
Yeah, it's a good question. We have mapped out, I would say, basically through the end of the year in terms of our planning, and we're not going to make any sort of large structural changes through the end of the year. It's mostly about coordinating visiting schedules and things like that and aligning that. But we have not yet really had a systematic conversation about kind of longer term, what's the structure going to look like. So I think we're going to be coming to that, but we haven't quite done that yet.
Okay, so as we wrap this up, of course we could go deeper. What is one thing you can do toward that goal? And tell me what that goal is, reframing from the beginning. So repeat. So you just said, for example, that's something that systematically, or you might have that conversation sooner than later. And I'm going to say that this stress consistently throughout your writing looks like it's connected to the travel. It's the Y and the I, I'll repeat that again, are connected to that. So when you think of those 1 to 3 things you could do within the week, as busy as you are in terms of all the different priorities, I would say that dealing with what we're dealing with now, even though it's on a personal level, not a professional level, will alleviate some or not all that stress that seems to, in some ways, weighing you down in a way and causing you this. It's almost like there's constant reflection going on in your head. It's this you're very analytical, so it's this you're a thinker, so you're going over this so much. It's taking up so much of your headspace right now, and I wonder if that's even cutting into the theatrical goals, because it's if you follow your thoughts throughout the day, I wonder if we came back in a week, how much of your thought processing time is about what I'm going to do about this situation with my girlfriend living in Boston and my mom living in Miami, I think.
She lives in North Carolina now, but
she lives in North Carolina now. Yeah.
But yeah, she likes Miami a lot. That's a place that she would probably be happy settling.
Okay. So perfect. So as we wind up, 2 questions for you. If you were to make a list of 1 to 3 goals that you wanted to do this week that will advance this bigger goal about making the decision about where to live and how to balance these professional and personal priorities, what would those 1 to 3 things be if I put you on the spot now?
All right, amazing. Thank you so much, Jamie. I think this is good. I mean, it clarifies for me that what needs to happen, and I think these are fairly long-term things. So it probably doesn't need to be this week, but my timeline is probably over this summer, maybe, to have the conversation
Okay.
about, what is 2024 look like? What does 2025 look like in terms of just getting on the same page with my girlfriend about what our timing and schedules would look like? Because it's true, especially now that business travel is back. I'm finding myself often like on the road for like 2 weeks at a time, which is really hard when, it's fine if it's like every once in a while, but if you're doing it every month and you're kind of constantly resettling between locations, it's a little bit stressful, just in terms of like stress on your body or stress on, logistics. So getting a sort of shared understanding of what the goal is that we're working toward would be helpful.
Okay. Excellent. What did you appreciate about this process?
Well, thank you. I appreciated the fact that, you were certainly asking good, like, reflective questions, which I liked. And, what a cool thing to bring handwriting into it. I've not had that before as part of coaching, but it's really neat to get to experience that and to sort of have to use that as a little bit of a mirror or a technique for probing deeper. So that was really neat. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dorie. And this was the Signature Leadership Show.